Have any of you been watching the news? Trick question. I've been watching the news quite a bit this week. I've been enamored with a particular story that seems to be permeating many a feed all over the country, all over Europe, and that is of the development of the Notre Dame Cathedral. I'm enamored not just with the blessing of the consecration of the high altar there, but I'm also interested in the reopening of that cathedral space. And in that, I am really interested in the stories that are being told about this space, what it's been thought to have been, what it is, and the projection of what it is that it shall be. This seemingly everlasting sacred space. A cathedral that was built in the Gothic tradition in 1345. There in a community of Celtic tribes that turned later to a Roman city and then later turned its influence towards its Frankish counterparts who were to join. Here on this particular place is where they assembled one of the largest structures through an evolving religiosity of the European world. Take a moment, just a moment, to consider the context of the individual agricultural life of the people that lived during that time. Think about the spaces and the places that they occupied. A community living on the soil, reaping its benefits. One that they probably in their lifetime had only seen one and maybe two-story domiciles, if even that. And then coming out of the woods, coming over the crest of the hill and seeing a structure that would appear to them as though they had come to New York City for the first time in their life. A skyscraper of sorts, 225 feet tall. Taller than any tree they had probably seen, any castle that they might have gazed upon in the distance, as though it was stepping its way to the clouds. We think of this in broad terms, or at least I do, but I can only imagine the wow and the inspiration felt by those who traveled to see it. A structure that had over 1,700 years of footsteps and prayer and song peppered upon its walls. And a feeling as though they were not only able to restore that this weekend, but amend what had been burnt and broken, not just physically, but perhaps also intellectually and emotionally and spiritually, able to resurrect the building back to its former state of holy. The holy that in our minds we always kind of held for this place, the holy that has now been embedded. It seems as though it's been embedded in the structure today, and the projection of the holy that is to come from this space. I can only imagine as a priest that of all the congregations where you don't get into an argument with the congregation about what their tradition is, this is probably one. Now, for context, it took 52 acres of trees just to construct the wooden frame that made the ceiling of the cathedral space. It, at the time, before 2019 in the fire, was the oldest surviving wooden frame in all of Europe, each beam being made from just one tree. That, combined with its flying buttresses and its transepts and its stained glass windows, and throughout her life, like the life of a Christian, that cathedral, even though it was constructed, it was never complete, because no cathedral is ever complete, because no Christian is ever complete, always given herself to restoration and refurbishment, a structure always changing to meet the evolving needs of a community and a people so it can be the church it was, the church it is, and the church that it's supposed to be. Now, again, what I find interesting about this story is not just the constructive efforts, people coming from all over the world, including Long Island, stonemasons from Long Island, going over to participate in the restoration, but I'm also interested in the stories of how this particular cathedral has served its community. This sense of community and desired continuity through the thinking of the way that it's always been and the way that it will always be. Now, in learning these stories, I was interested to learn that in the 17th century, in the 1600s, and in the 1800s, that the Cathedral of Notre Dame actually shut down. Did you know this? It became something different. Do you know what it became? A cult. With massive efforts of de-Christianization, the cathedral was challenged by then a modern population of this newborn thought of atheism and these liberal aspirations, French liberal aspirations towards new knowledge and science as being the real truth. And Notre Dame was later rededicated to be known as the cult of reason. I did not know this. And later, it would become the cult of the supreme being. Now, this is France's first state effort in atheism as a religion. And you can imagine what spiritual and physical hardships it faced as a result of it becoming a cult in this way. The instance of the meeting place that it created for these cults of reason, well, they only occupied a small space within the body of this huge building. And so what do you think happened with the rest of the space? Well, it became a warehouse and a barn, a place to store city implements. And because it was so unmanaged, it was often left open and available to be robbed of not only its religious sentiments, but its religious ornament, as mobs would frequently deface and destroy and plunder the constructive artwork and statues that were contained therein. 200 years of this. It wasn't until 1801 where the French Emperor Bonaparte restored the status of the cathedral as holy and Catholic. Now think about that for a moment. That wasn't that long ago. And he used that new site for the setting of his royal coronation. But again, for context, it was only set back to be a religious institution just 220 years. And while the status was restored, the building was in complete and total shambles. Now, this has a cultural implication, of course, as all things do, and a literal implication. You may recall Victor Hugo's work, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. In it, he wrote, in an attempt not just to tell a story, but to draw attention back to the plight faced by the cathedral in the early 1800s. In it, he says, without a doubt, the Church of Notre Dame of Paris is even today a majestic and sublime building. However, even if its beauty had been conserved as it aged, it's difficult not to sigh at the indignities suffered at men's hands. And I'm brought back in study of this place and space, this design, this sort of projection, my own, mind you, maybe in my naivety, that this place was always that thing. And now this place is this thing, and now it's going to be that thing. You know, we kind of fill in the blanks on this stuff ourselves. But this feeling as though it's always been a place of solace and prayer and praise and relief. And then the realization that it's also been a place as hospital and church, barn and warehouse. A sign of what it is now, perhaps, a sign of what it is to come. Now, putting this into context in this modern world that we live in, this world that seems to be becoming increasingly secular, in saying this, I wonder now, today, as they finish the work that they've finished, because they haven't completed it. Again, a cathedral is never finished. But I ask the question, is what they have done and how they've done it enough? What do you think? All their work, all their effort, also all the gladness, all the joy, all the turmoil, all the dismay. Is it exactly and fully what they need? What they will need? My summation is that it is still not enough. It's not complete. Just like the Christian people who occupy it, It is not complete because nothing in this world is fully complete. Even in the newness of the space, even with the newness of time, even with the technology employed, it's not fully complete. Now you're probably wondering, how does this measure to the context of our gospel this day? One where John the Baptizer is one of the first to develop the coming of Christ in the immediacy of his time, a cousin of Christ, a prophet, mind you, but not to be called the Lord himself, although given the opportunity to do so. No, John recognizes the coming of Christ because he is the one that recognizes and understands the voice of God, because he knows him and he loves him. And he's acting with him for the sake of all humanity. Prepare the way of the Lord, he says. And he gives the directive of not only Christ's coming, but that God will make all things new, all things different, and all things complete. A new force of imagination that is to confront the world in a way that we have not known, although we have tried to know it that way. We've tried to fill in the blanks. We've tried to make things complete, but yet we still do not fully comprehend. And this king will reign not by the might of a sword, but by his peace. Peace I give to you, peace I leave with you. But here's the challenging part. The peace that he leaves is not a promise that things will always remain the same, or that things will be enough, or that things will be okay. But instead, he leaves us with a peace through the preparation of our lives. We will not be given a guarantee for regularity. We will not be given a guarantee for normalcy. That is not this peace. Instead, he gives us a biological programming that says in our lives, every day of our lives, we will change. Change is preparation for this Christian promise. A reminder that he places, that the places that we inhabit and the humanly form that we occupy, although lovely, although a blessing, changes day by day. We have been programmed for this. But we've also been given the blessing of understanding the hope and the promise of what is ahead. Thus, our commitment to God is an abandonment of this world. An abandonment in the knowledge that this world will pass away. And with it, we're given the hope of the everlasting. Isaiah says that all flesh shall see the salvation of God. It's an opportunity for us to consider not just the immediacy of what it is that we're holding on to now and all the projections and baggage that we place upon it, maybe in our community, our family, our church, our institutions. But it's to remind us that our living through them, we are to embrace their peaks and their valleys, times of extreme faith and deserts alike, and know that no matter how good or bad today may be, there is more to our story than just the now. Amen.